Two people just ate the exact same lunch, same plate, same rice, same everything. One of them laces up their shoes and goes for a brisk 30-minute walk. The other never leaves the building. They just stand up for 20 seconds every 45 minutes and do 10 slow squats, then sit back down like nothing happened. By the end of the day, according to the researchers who ran this exact test, the squat person's blood sugar was flatter, healthier, better controlled. Not the one who did the real exercise, the one who barely left their chair. That result broke something scientists thought they understood. Because for years, the advice has been simple. Eat, then walk. Doctors say it, nutritionists say it, every health article says it. And it's not wrong. Walking after a meal does help. But in 2024, a team of researchers ran a study that nobody expected to turn out this way. And what they found suggests that advice has been quietly incomplete this whole time. 10 squats every 45 minutes, 20 seconds each time. And in a head-to-head test, that beat a full 30 minutes of walking. Not matched it, beat it by roughly double. Stay with this, because the reason why is stranger than you guess, and it changes what you should actually be doing after you eat. Whether you're at a desk, in a meeting, or on your couch tonight. Here's what almost nobody knows about their own body. Your muscles have a secret back door for pulling sugar out of your blood. A door that doesn't need permission from insulin. A door most people never open, because opening it requires something specific, and it's not what you think. To understand why 10 squats could outperform an entire dedicated workout, you first need to understand what's actually happening in your bloodstream the moment you finish eating. Because right now, most people are getting this wrong, and it's costing them more than an afternoon slump. When you eat a meal with carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises. That part everyone knows. Your body breaks the food down into glucose. The glucose enters your bloodstream, and your cells are supposed to absorb it for energy. Simple enough, but here's the part that gets skipped over. Your muscles are the biggest glucose sponges you own, and two of the largest sponges in your entire body, your quadriceps. The muscles running down the front of your thighs, and your glutes do almost nothing when you're sitting down. They just sit there idle. And when your body's two biggest glucose-absorbing muscles go quiet, the sugar in your blood has nowhere efficient to go. It lingers. It stays elevated longer than it should. That lingering is what you feel as the afternoon crash, the foggy head, the heavy, sleepy pull after lunch that makes you want to put your head down on your desk. Do that every single day for years. And researchers link those repeated spikes to something much bigger than a bad afternoon: insulin resistance, weight gain around the middle, and for some people, eventually, type 2 diabetes. Now here's the door nobody tells you about. Normally, glucose needs insulin to unlock its way into a muscle cell. That's the standard pathway. Food comes in, insulin gets released, insulin unlocks the door, sugar goes in. But when a muscle actually contracts, really contracts, under real load, it opens a second door, one that has nothing to do with insulin at all, one that doesn't ask permission. That's why movement works to lower blood sugar even in people whose insulin signaling isn't functioning well. You're not waiting on your hormones to catch up. You're bypassing them completely, using nothing but the muscle itself, which means the type of movement you choose isn't a minor detail. It's the entire game. A gentle stroll barely taxes your leg muscles, so it opens that second door only a crack. A squat, done with real intent, forces the same muscles to contract hard, and that swings the door open wide. More sugar leaves your blood faster, in a fraction of the time. So a team of researchers asked the obvious next question. If contraction is what matters, what's the single most effective way to trigger it? Using nothing but your own body weight. What they found is the reason you're watching this. In 2024, a research team led by Ying Gao at Zhejiang University set out to settle this head-to-head. 18 men. Each one tested on 4 separate days, meaning every single person acted as their own control group. Same body, same meal, different movement pattern, different day. That's about as clean as a comparison gets. On day 1, they sat still for 8.5 hours straight. On day 2, they took one 30-minute walk. On day 3, they broke up their sitting with 3-minute walks every 45 minutes. And on day 4, the one that mattered most, they did the exact same broken up pattern, but swapped the walking for squats. Every single condition was matched for total time moved and total energy burned. This wasn't more exercise wins. This was a test of pattern, of timing, of how the exact same amount of movement rearranged changes what happens inside your bloodstream, and the results didn't just lean one way. They landed hard. Every form of movement beats sitting still. That part was expected, but the single 30-minute walk, the one everyone's been told to do, came in dead last among the movement options. The broken up walking and the squats both crushed it, cutting the after-meal blood sugar response by roughly twice as much as the one long walk managed. Researchers also placed sensors on the skin to track exactly which muscles were firing hardest in each condition, and the answer was consistent. The quadriceps and the glutes, the two biggest movers in your lower body, were doing almost all the work. The harder those two fired, the bigger the drop in blood sugar. Your hamstrings, for whatever reason, barely moved the needle. Translate that into a number and it's stark. Compared to sitting the entire time, breaking up the day with any kind of movement lowered the total glucose burden meaningfully, but the single walk only closed part of that gap. The broken up walking and the squats closed roughly double that. In plain terms, that's the difference between a blood sugar curve that spikes hard and drifts back down slowly, and one that barely lifts off the baseline at all. If you've ever watched a continuous glucose monitor in real time, this is the kind of gap that shows up as an obviously flatter line on the screen. And this wasn't a fluke result from one lucky trial. When researchers pooled dozens of similar studies together, different labs, different countries, entirely different groups of people, the same basic pattern kept showing up. Breaking up sitting time with short bursts of movement, almost any kind, consistently lowered after-meal blood sugar and insulin compared to sitting straight through. That's a much larger, more reliable body of evidence than any single study could offer on its own. What GAO's trial added on top of that foundation was the specific showdown: squats versus broken up, walking versus one long walk, plus the muscle sensor data that finally explains why some breaks in your day work so much better than others. So how does 20 seconds of squatting, repeated through the day, actually outperform a dedicated 30-minute walk? Once you see the mechanism, it stops sounding strange and starts sounding obvious. Picture your thigh and glute muscles as a battery. When you sit for hours, that battery just sits there, half-charged, doing nothing, drawing nothing. A single walk drains it a little once, and then you go right back to hours of sitting. Afterward, battery untouched again, but short, intense bursts. Squats especially hit that battery hard and repeatedly, over and over, all day long. Every burst pulls glucose out of your bloodstream to refuel the muscle, and because you're doing it every 45 minutes instead of once, you're forcing that insulin-free door open again and again, instead of cracking it once and letting it swing shut for good. That's the actual insight buried in this research. It was never about total minutes moved. It's about how often you interrupt sitting and how hard you make those two big muscles work. Each time you do. There's a second piece here that most people miss entirely: timing. Your blood sugar doesn't spike the second food hits your stomach. It usually peaks somewhere between 30 and 90 minutes after you finish eating. As digestion catches up and glucose floods your bloodstream, that window is exactly when movement does the most good, because that's when your muscles have the most sugar available to pull out of circulation. Wait 3 hours to take your walk, after the spike has already come and mostly gone, and you've missed a large share of the benefit without realizing it. This is part of why the every 45 minutes pattern works so well. It lands you inside that window automatically, meal after meal, almost by accident. It also explains exactly why a single half-hour walk can underperform even a genuinely brisk one. Take that walk right after eating, and you'll likely catch part of the spike. But then you sit back down, and for the next several hours, through the tail end of that meal's digestion, and often straight into your next meal, your biggest glucose-absorbing muscles go quiet again. The broken-up approach never lets that quiet stretch get long enough to matter. Not everyone needs this equally, though, and knowing where you fall changes how urgent this is for you. If your day already involves a lot of movement, an active job, frequent walking, physical labor, your muscles are rarely idle for long stretches to begin with. so the extra benefit here may be smaller for you. But if you work a desk job, sit through long meetings, or simply have stretches where hours pass without you standing up, this research is speaking directly to you. Same if you're carrying extra weight in your 40s or beyond. Or if blood sugar is already something you or your doctor are watching. Those are exactly the situations where repeated glucose spikes tend to compound into the biggest long-term cost and where breaking up sitting tends to make the most visible difference. Before you go build your entire routine around this, a few honest caveats worth knowing, because the version of this that went viral got some of it wrong. This study was done in 18 young, overweight men. It's well designed, but it's small, and it hasn't yet been repeated in older adults, in women, or in people who already have diabetes. A separate review pooling dozens of similar studies backs the general pattern that breaking up sitting with movement beats sitting straight through, which is reassuring. But the specific claim that 10 squats beats 30 minutes of walking comes from one trial in one narrow group. And the researchers themselves say it needs testing in broader populations before anyone calls it settled. You may also have seen posts claiming 10 squats in 30 seconds is the magic formula. That's not quite right. In the actual study, each squat break lasted about 3 minutes, not 30 seconds. Small detail, but worth getting right if you're actually going to try this. And one more honest point. This research is about the spike after a single meal. It's not a replacement for the bigger picture of long-term metabolic health. Your overall diet, your regular exercise, your sleep, your weight post-meal movement is one tool. It was never meant to be the whole toolbox. If you take blood sugar lowering medication, or you have joint issues that make squatting uncomfortable, it's worth a quick conversation with your doctor before building a new routine around this. Not because the movement is risky, but because your situation may call for a version tailored to your body. And squats aren't the only option either. Worth knowing, because not everybody can squat comfortably. Simple sit-to-stands from a chair, standing up and sitting back down, using only your legs, no hands, recruit nearly the same muscles as a squat. And they're a gentler entry point if your knees are sensitive. Stair climbing, even just a flight or two, hits the same big muscle groups and fits naturally into an office or a multi-story home. There's also early research on seated calf raises, which showed a meaningful drop in blood sugar in one small study, though that result came from a controlled lab setting using a sugar drink rather than an actual meal. So it's promising rather than proven. The common thread across every one of these options isn't the specific exercise. It's contraction, making a large muscle group genuinely work briefly on a repeating schedule. So if squats aren't for you, this was never all or nothing. Pick whichever version your body tolerates and do that one consistently. Consistency is doing more of the work here than the exact exercise you choose. Here's the simplest version that actually matches what the research tested. If you want a plan rather than a theory, right after a meal, ideally within that 30 to 90 minute window, set a repeating timer for every 45 minutes, for as long as you'd otherwise be sitting. When it goes off, stand up. 10 squats, slow and controlled, as low as is comfortable for your knees. If a full squat feels like too much on day one, start shallow and let the range deepen over the following weeks. No need to rush the depth or the pace. The trial that produced these results used ordinary, unhurried squats, not an intense workout. Do this for the first few hours after a meal, then let it lapse until your next one. You don't need to keep it up all day, and you don't need special shoes, a gym membership, or extra time carved out of your schedule. The entire point of this research is that it fits into gaps you already have. Give it 2 or 3 weeks before judging how it feels. Most people notice less of an afternoon slump long before they'd see any change on a lab test, and that's usually the first sign it's working. So here's the practical version, stripped of the jargon. If you can walk after a meal, do it. Walking is still genuinely good for you, and a short walk beats sitting still every single time. But if you're stuck at a desk, in back-to-back meetings, or simply don't have 30 minutes to spare, don't write off movement altogether. Set a timer for every 45 minutes. When it goes off, stand up. 10 slow, controlled squats. Or if your knees don't love squats, 10 sit-to-stands from a chair. No hands, just your legs, if squatting isn't right for you at all. A brisk 3-minute walk around the house or office lands you in almost the same place. Waiting for coffee to brew, waiting for a call to start, waiting on the microwave, those little dead gaps in your day are exactly where this fits. 20 seconds, 10 times a day, adds up to less time than a single commercial break. And based on what this research shows, it may do more for your blood sugar than one dedicated walk ever could. The most realistic way to build this into your life is to attach it to something you already do automatically. Instead of relying on willpower or a timer, you'll eventually start ignoring. Every time you refill your water glass, 10 squats. Every time you check your phone, 10 squats. Every ad break, every time you hang up a call. Habits that piggyback on something automatic tend to survive far longer than habits that depend on remembering a schedule. And on the days you genuinely can't manage a walk or squats at all, a long meeting, a flight, a waiting room, even just standing up and shifting your weight, or simply refusing to stay glued to one position for hours, appears to help a little. It won't match true muscle contraction, but it beats total stillness. This was never about perfection. It's about not letting your body go quiet for hours on end. The walk was never wrong. It's just not the whole answer. The real answer turns out to be smaller, more frequent, and honestly, more doable than almost anyone expects. One last thing before you go. Let's close the loop on what you've actually learned, because a few myths are worth killing for good. You need to walk for at least 30 minutes for it to count. Not true, based on this research. Even 3-minute bursts, done often enough, outperformed one long session. More squats is always better. Not necessarily. The study used 10 controlled squats, not 50, not 100. This was never about exhausting yourself. It's about brief, repeated activation. Frequency was the variable that mattered, not volume. This replaces walking altogether. No, walking still carries its own well-documented benefits for your heart, your joints, your mood, and your long-term fitness benefits this research never touched. Squats are a smart addition for the specific problem of post-meal glucose spikes, not a replacement for an active life. This is only about squats. Also, no. Squats won this particular showdown because of how hard they work the quadriceps and glutes. But the underlying principle, interrupt sitting often, engage big muscles when you do, is what actually matters. And it can be applied through walking, stairs, sit-to-stands, or squats, depending on what your body can handle. So the next time you finish a meal and think about going for a walk, remember what those 18 men proved on that 4th day. You don't need 30 minutes. You need 45 seconds, 10 times over. Your body will do the rest.